Hello, everybody. We're just getting started here. Let's see if we have, if I can share this. Pop over to the agenda, which is in a new arena or area this year, this week. We're experimenting and moving our agenda building process over to projects in the operator framework under the community repo. And you should be able to see my screen now. Okay. So today the agenda, and I'm just going to quickly go through here, is that I've set up is an update on the operator framework. There's been a number of discussions on the mailing list, so I'm going to let Rob handle that. And then I think Daniel Messier is joining us, and he can give us an update on the Operator Hub or operatorhub.io and those that are in the queue. Then there's a governance proposal. I'm going to move that one up first, if you don't, ahead of here, and a little bit about what's coming up at KubeCon North America and OpenShift Commons talks updates. And then we have a short presentation from Annette Hewitt, who I think maybe Annette is on the line now, and she's going to talk about using the local storage operator and how they did that with the Rook Ceph OCS stuff. And so, because I think a number of people are here, and she's prepared a little talk on that, and maybe we'll do all of the business before that and save her presentation for the end of this. So does that sound reasonable to everybody? And if there's anything else someone wants to add, this is a very flexible system. So just add it in there. And Rob, if you need the screen to do your operator framework update, and if so, just take it away.
I don't think I need the screen. I was just gonna speak a little bit. So I know there's been some questions on the mailing list about some of the new features and releases and things like that. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of that. We released on the SDK version 0.11, which coincidentally was 11 days ago, which is cool. And that's got a number of bug fixes and new features primarily related to Kube Builder. So if you haven't been tracking the SDK as closely, we aligned with the one of the upstream projects called Kube Builder, and this is a set of underlying tools to manage both aggregated API servers and controller loops and things like that, all the underpinnings of an operator. And so this is so we don't duplicate code, and so we picked in a lot of the new features from that, and that's what is going to continue to drive some of our release cycle in terms of timing. Is typically when Kube Builder is going to do a release, and that a lot of the members of this SIG are working on upstream. That'll get consumed into the SDK along with other kind of the user experience related features that we have. So the CLI is going to remain compatible kind of behind the scenes, and so that'll drive a lot of the timing. So if you see a new big Kube Builder, I guess I'll actually share my screen. If you see a Kube Builder release, then that is what's going on. So here's the version 0.11. You can see, I'm not going to read through all of this, some new features and things that were added. One thing that you'll see is we're doing some regular maintenance on the Helm SDK. An update on that in terms of where we're going with that is we know that Helm 3 is right around the corner, and so we are planning to pull that in when it gets pretty stabilized and update the SDK so you can build Helm 3 based operators. The nice thing about that is it doesn't require tiller, a bunch of other cool things as well coming with that. As always, there are some breaking changes that happen. This is part of the transition to Kube Builder. You have to make some changes from time to time. Those are called out in the release notes. So the team's done a really great job with this. So if you have any questions about this, please open issues, send emails to the mailing list. Would love to get everybody's feedback on how this process goes over time and how we can make it better and better. That's about the update on the SDK. We can jump over to the Lifecycle Manager and take a quick look at their releases. Very similar in version scheme. So 0.12 came out 22 days ago. Quick look at the changelog. A number of just kind of everyday bug fixes and things like that. One thing you'll see is mentions for private registries. This is a big focus of ours, as you know, we've started on the easiest use case, which is these online clusters where everybody can pull container images from all over the place, from Docker Hub and from Quay and etc. But we also want to make OLM work just as well for private registries. And so if you want to mirror down content of an operator and then put it in your private registry that's behind your firewall, we want OLM to work for that. So that's a lot of the work that's going on now and will go into the future. That'll involve some changes to the CSV, just kind of declaring which images that you support so that you can then go sync them into your cluster. I think that is about the update. I don't want to take too much time away from the already packed agenda that we have. Make sure we have time to talk about the local storage operator. But if there's any questions really quick on some of the things that are going on, I'd love to take them.
All right. So driving right along, I'm still working on the notes file. Apologize.
Sorry, one other thing.
Okay.
Wanted to mention that one of the things about KubeBuilder that is really great is we're not duplicating that work, like I said. So we're working with Kubernetes community. And so what this frees us up to do is spend more time on a better user experience, better troubleshooting, fixing bugs, etc. Also, possibly opening up more time to consider new SDKs. I know we've talked about this in the past before, but once again, if you have interest in like a Java SDK or a Python SDK, we'd love to hear your use cases on the mailing list. I know we've discussed, I think, Java a little bit in the past. So continuing to look at that, it's a big investment, so we want to make sure that it's the right thing to do. But if you have interest in that, please let us know, or later on in the SIG call or future SIGs. And Diane, I don't know, are you going to talk about any of the CNCF donation process?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but Daniel's also up next for talking a little bit about on operatorhub.io and the operators that are in the queue and where we're going with that.
Okay, great.
So if we'll drive right along there. Daniel, are you on, I guess, the question?
Yeah, he's here.
He's there. Is he muted?
Yes, I'm here. Hey, Bill.
Oh, go for it. Do you need to share something, Daniel?
Just something?
An update on the what's the progress and what's in the queue for Operator Hub?
There's a presentation I want to share real quick.
Okay, I'm taking silence for a yes.
Yeah, I just came out of another call. Sorry for that.
I know, it's okay. I knew because that's why I left early that call. Yeah. And Chris, while I'm there, are you able to get into the HackerMD file link that I put into chat? I'm making Chris my tester for everything today.
Human guinea pig. That's what I was in the military. Yes, I can get into that and edit it.
So, while we're waiting for Daniel to do that, if you put a link for HackerMD to use for public notes. So if you could add your name as attendees into that would be great, and I will endeavor to keep track of what we talk about today. And I think it was HackerMD I was using before too. So.
Diane, I think I'm just going to share the proposal for the governance right now. Is that fine with you?
That is fine. Yeah. We'll move that one up. Yep. And while he's doing that, maybe the topic around Operator Hub is if people who are on the call, there's about 30 people on the call, if you have things that are in the queue, maybe we'll open it up and ask people if they have questions or things that they want to move forward after you do the governance stuff. So go ahead and share.
Yeah, let me do that very quick.
Still not seeing your screen. There you go.
Yeah, it comes up in a second. All right. So one thing you may have already heard of is that we as a company have proposed the operator framework as an upstream Kubernetes open source project for inclusion in CNCF. What that means in a nutshell is that we are going to donate, in particular, the operator SDK, the lifecycle manager, and operator hub.io to CNCF as a standard or like as a community umbrella organization in order to get obviously more interaction with upstream, more contribution from third parties, and in general, more discussion about the life cycling and development of operators. One aspect of that is that we are going to introduce a more formal governance model around the operator framework project in general, which is on the one hand a requirement from the CNCF, of course, but on the other hand, it's also a very good habit because so far this is something that is not entirely transparent to the community on how the roadmap comes to be and how it looks like and how decisions are made and what is all the interesting stuff that we are planning for the future. So in order to give context to that, we created a charter, which is, if you look at it, very similar to the charter that OpenShift or OKD as a community version of OpenShift has. And this is really about some standard stuff like what's the mission statement, what is considered in scope, what are we doing as part of the framework, and what are some of the more logistical aspects of that. So one example for that is our operations model. So there will be a group of chairs that will lead this community. This is a draft, by the way. This is up for discussion, and it's available as a pull request in the community repository in Operator Framework. So this is obviously up for public discussion. The structure is heavily inspired by how OpenShift and OKD does it. But in the end, there's going to be a group of people who are running the community as chairs. Diane, you obviously being one of them, but also core maintainers of the various projects, as well as product management from our side. These chairs have voting rights and need to form a quorum on decisions of significant interest, either inclusion of new members or taking on new objectives, or collaborating with other groups. So I don't want to make this too long, but this is a fairly standard implementation of an open source upstream governance model that you will find in many other projects like Helm, for instance, as well. And that is, I think, all I wanted to say here. So go check that out and see if and how you want to contribute to that. Another part that will come with formal governance is also more community liaison in terms of more public meetings, like this one, for instance, but focused on particular topics. So in the SDK community, for instance, we are discussing of having a community call, like a standard office hour standing call on a regular cadence to discuss all topics that are relevant for the SDK. And that would also be a forum to be a little bit more transparent about the roadmap, about upcoming releases, their time frame, and what they actually include. This is not formalized yet, but I think we'll let the individual sub-projects, mainly the SDK and OLM, run that either as part of this SIG or in separate meetings.
I think the main point that I make right now, we are a special interest group underneath, and we're meeting as underneath the OpenShift Commons umbrella. And this would probably, when we do the CNCF we move this to a working group under the CNCF or instantiate that in some other way. And we probably still have an operator's SIG hanging around under OpenShift Commons because it's of interest to the OpenShift community specifically, but this is a move to make this more of an openly governed project. So,
exactly. As it seems now, the SIG app delivery group is at least interested in having us. They are fairly new as well, so we'll see if that is how it turns out. But we have actually presented the operator framework for inclusion in the CNCF in that particular special interest group, which is also tied into SIG apps in general. But I think SIG app delivery from a charter and agenda perspective fits very well in what we want to do with operators, in particular with operator lifecycle management.
So, and if you have questions or comments or feedback on this, please just go straight in and log an issue on the link. The link is in, I'll put the link in the chat, and it's also on the projects board in this agenda item. So please do. We've done this, and when we get to a point where we feel like we've got a good comment and feedback on it, we'll put it out for. Actually, we probably should put out an official call for comment on this. And so before we move on to the Operator Hub update, I just maybe it would be more appropriate this time to talk about the status of the TOC stuff. So I'm just going to steal the screen back from you for a moment and go into that for a little bit. And I think if I can get to the screen here. And all I'm going to really say about that is if you we are set to be on the agenda for December 5th CNCF TOC meeting, so post KubeCon North America, and the official pull request where you can comment and see comments is here, and we would love it if people put in supportive comments of this effort in here or ask their questions. So if you can, I hope I'm sharing my screen. It doesn't look like it. Nope, I'm just wandering here. So if you take a look here, you will see the request. And we are requesting incubation status. We think we have enough people, obviously, on this call. There's 30 folks and another group of people that aren't here who already have operators and Operator Hub, and a lot of people using operators in-house at their enterprises, and we are heavily committed to it under the hood at OpenShift. So we think there's enough gravity of community here already to be considered for incubation. And if you are on this call and you want to just add a comment or ask a question or show support, we would love to have you add something to this pull request to help us forward this motion. So I'll just leave it at that and let you guys talk amongst yourselves about that, and then stop sharing my screen again, and we can move back over to the Operator Hub update unless there's questions. Okay, so take it back. There you go.
There are 4 things that I wanted to cover. I'm just having trouble finding my presentation right now, but I think it's fine if you go through it like this. 4 things for Operator Hub.io. The first thing is actually hopefully something some of you have already noticed. We are now trying to streamline the process of creating a packaged version of your operator suitable for deployment with the Lifecycle Manager. And for that, we have created a UI-based workflow in order to create your cluster service version file, which is really the heart of that packaging process, right? So if you have never packaged an operator before for Operator Hub.io or for Operator Lifecycle Manager, it's mainly about creating a YAML manifest that describes your operator, both on the more metadata heavy side, like a display name, a logo, a description, all the stuff that you want to see in a catalog like Operator Hub.io. So all the content on Operator Hub.io is coming out of this same metadata format. And on the other hand, there's a lot of data in it that is needed on cluster in order to run your operator. Now, it can be a little bit cumbersome because it's a lot of data and a fairly large YAML manifest to write this all yourself or get it right even using an example. So what we have done is we have created a package or bundle editor which allows you to do that in a graphical fashion. And there are two ways you could go about this. First, if you already have a cluster service version YAML and your custom resource definition manifest, you can just upload those here. And this UI wizard or editor will pre-populate as much as possible of that and allow you to edit this. Or if you are starting from scratch and you have no CSV at all, you just have your standard Kubernetes manifests, like, for instance, your deployment, or roles or cluster roles, role bindings, all this stuff, which you need for deploying your operator manually on Kube. You can just upload that as well, and the editor will try to put as much information and data out of that as possible and pre-populate a CSV in the background. So we can actually quickly try this out with one of the existing operators, since I have them checked out here. So let's take, for instance, this one. You just upload this stuff. Let's say you already have a CSV that would basically be recognized by the editor as existing data, and it will populate everything in there. And now if you were to create a new version of your operator, let's say CockroachDB 2.1.12 or 13, you could just go in here and make edits in a UI with validation, with guidance, with proper errors. Let's say you want to do, for instance, increase the capability model. You don't need to write it in YAML file. You can use a UI for that. So this really helps you do that in a more human-friendly way with less opportunity for errors. And it also works off the standard Kube manifest. So you don't have to have a cluster service version YAML. You don't have to have an existing package already. If you have just the standard Kube manifest, this operator, this bundle editor will basically be able to pre-populate as much of that as possible, including some of the more complicated stuff like CRDs. So, well, this one didn't quite work, I guess. But for instance, the deployment can be edited here. So if you need to change that somehow, you're doing that with a proper editor, so there's no issues anymore with indent and syntax errors and something like that. So this is in beta, and we'd love to have your feedback on this because we obviously want you to create as easy as possible these bundles and update your submissions to operator.hub.io or on your cluster. And this is hopefully an easier way to do that rather than dealing with all the YAML yourself. What you get as a result is a download. It's a zip file which contains at least your CSV, all your CRDs, and a package YAML, which is exactly what's needed in order to make a contribution to operator.hub.io. And you can always also switch back to full YAML edit mode if you need that, or you want to see what a particular setting did, and get that in an editor here as well that even has syntax highlighting and code completion. You can also preview that so you see how that would work and how that would look like on operator.hub.io. So yeah, would love to get your feedback on that. If you have feedback, there is an repository in the operator framework org for the site itself, operator.hub.io. And we would love to have your feedback there. And you just create, you create an issue here in the GitHub repository for that. That's that. The other thing that I wanted to make you aware of is that we have updated our contribution guidelines. We are now including something that's called DCO, and that should be very well known to people who have at once at least committed a Helm chart to the public Helm chart repository. Developer certificate of origin is basically a very loosely formal or informal process to sign off contribution. So here you are basically just saying in every PR that you make, you are adding this particular line signed off and then by your name and with your official email address, which is essentially you stating that you have the right to modify this either existing operator or add this operator to operator hub.io. So we get a sense of authenticity and ownership there. Again, very loosely defined, just append that if on your PR, especially if you modify an existing operator. The only criteria here for that is that your name on GitHub must match whatever you put in here. And this should also match the original submitter of the PR. In addition to that, we have also changed the file layout of the bundle format. This is the metadata that drives operator hub.io, and this is the cluster service version stuff that I was talking about before. So before we had everything in one big directory, and you were supposed to, just drop in your additional CSVs in your new or updated CRDs. This nested structure basically has one folder per operator version, and you are supposed to basically store the entire versioning history of your operators in a directory that's named after your operator project title. This is already used by quite a lot of tooling in the operator framework organization and code repository. Operator hub.io was literally the last bastion that used the flat format, so we've changed this now. So hopefully all new PRs will be using that. And later this week, we are also going to convert all the existing content in the community operators repository to that nested format. That's that. And the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is that we have added an automated way to test your operators with a local cluster. So obviously, whenever you add an operator to operator hub.io by adding or by creating a pull request on the community operators repo, there's a bunch of tests that is run in order to check your operator for completeness, syntactic correctness, and if it deploys with OLM and if it behaves correctly on cluster. Now it may be a little bit cumbersome to see that only coming in via PRs and GitHub checks that are created as part of the PRs. You may want to test it before you actually make the contribution, and you can do so already with manual instructions. So we have that here as well. So we walk you through this entire process of testing your operator deployment with OLM on either Kubernetes or OpenShift step by step. But we've also automated this now. So there is in the top level directory of the community operators repo a makefile, which you can just call on a particular operator on your local disk. And this makefile has several subcommands that represent different test modes. And what it will do, it will basically run the same amount of linting, validation, and on-cluster test as all the tests that are done by the pipeline behind operator hub.io. This gives you a chance to catch errors in syntax or packaging quite early, so you don't need to wait on PR feedback and intervention from some of the maintainers of operator hub.io. So what you need for this is either a Linux or a Mac machine. Needs to have Docker installed, Make obviously as well, and either an existing Kubernetes cluster or if you have it installed, Minikube. The tool will basically try to sense if you have a running cluster already by inspecting your kube config. If you don't, it will offer you to create a Minikube cluster just for the test run, and it will create that for you. It will basically install OLM in that for you. It will package your operator into a catalog so it can be installed by OLM. It will trigger the installation, and then it will run a couple of behavioral tests on your operator to see if it's basically adheres to known best practices. These best practices are the ones identified by the scorecard utility, which is part of the operator SDK. Long story short, if you have a Linux or Mac host with Docker and Make installed, you can run this particular command, make operator.test, and then you give it the path to your bundles on disk. And that will also already work with the new nested format. And then it runs all these tests for you. So at the very end of this, you should have a clear preview of how the pipeline will treat your submission. That's it. Any questions to that? No? Then please play with that. Please provide us feedback, both on the editor as well as the makefile. Yes, please.
Yeah, when you run through this new makefile, can you control which of the scorecard tests you run, or does it run all of them?
Right now, there is unfortunately no way in the scorecard to state which tests should be run. We are working on an improved version of the scorecard utility to do just that, actually. But the current version does not do that. So the current version will, blindly run those standard tests that are shipped with the utility. You can actually even ship your own custom tests with that, although I have not seen that functionality being taken up. But no, you can't influence that right now. But we are working on an improved version of that.
Okay, thank you.
The default tests of the scorecard are still variable though. So if they tell you something is not right, then there's probably a good reason for it. We know it can be buggy sometimes, but usually it catches all the missing metadata stuff and like missing examples and stuff like that.
Anyone else have questions for Daniel on this? John Docker, it looks like. You're trying to say something or ask something? No, not. We're going to move on. And I'm going to take over your screen again. And I just wanted to give a couple of updates on KubeCon North America and the OpenShift Commons talk. Just a reminder to everybody that, and as well, that the Red Hat Summit call for papers ends today, the 22nd. When I wrote this, it was tomorrow. So if you have a session that you'd like to submit, get it in today. If you have a talk that you are giving at KubeCon North America that is about your operator or tangentially about operators, please let us know. So one of the things I'm going to try and do for KubeCon North America is sort of write a guide to operators and all things operators at KubeCon North America for people to have all the talks. So let me know if you've got one. And if you've got a new and interesting case study, I'm always looking for those because we'll have an OpenShift Commons gathering on the November 18th at KubeCon. So we'll probably do something there as well. I just was informed that they rented a room just for me to hold meetings in at KubeCon North America, which kind of like is making more work for Diane, but that's okay, because what I was thinking was that we would do our next virtual SIG meeting the week before KubeCon, which the date of which would be, I think, the 11th or the 12th, actually, sorry, the 12th so we do one virtually prior because it's craziness at KubeCon to try and really have an official SIG meeting. But if people were open to it, the room, once I know what the size of it is that they've given me, it's probably 12 to 20 people in the room. We could have a face-to-face session and have everybody get together and chat at KubeCon. So once I have the room number and the size, I will send out a notice to the group to see if people are up for that. So, and I'm trying to coordinate that with everybody's presentations at KubeCon so that everyone who's coming to KubeCon can meet up as well. So that was kind of what we had on the schedule today for official business. And as we want to do, I have a short Ansible update, I think, from Chris.
Yes.
All right, so why don't you do that, and then we're going to give the rest of the time to Annette to do her talk on local storage operator.
Hang on, I've got to, I just updated to Catalina. I've got to update 1,000 things permissions wise. Ugh.
Do you want to go after?
Let's see if this works.
All right, give it a sec.
No. Cool, yeah. Nope, permission required. All right, so I will drop a link to my slides somewhere in, but I can speak through them. So Ansible operator update. Wanted to provide an update on, Ansible is built into the operator SDK. We have been doing a lot of work around it and trying to popularize it and get more people thinking about moving workloads from wherever they are now, automated with their existing Ansible automation, to Kubernetes with a subset at least of that. So we feel like that the operator framework, Kubernetes and Ansible are a match made in heaven. It's all YAML all the way down, so that makes it super easy to lint at the very least. Taking hard-won existing automation for complex workloads into K8s really kind of opens eyes for people. And then in general, this is based off polling rooms and meetups and conferences I've spoken at. More people I've polled have familiarity with Ansible than Go by about 4 to 1. So plugging people in with Ansible into operators, I think, makes a ton of sense. We actually hosted a official workshop at Ansible Fest, building Kubernetes operators with Ansible, hands-on workshop. It sold out 100 registrations almost immediately. There were a total of 183 seats in the room. I did not count, but the room was absolutely packed. I can share that content there. I want to have a huge thank you to Michael Rivnak, Sean Stitch, Melvin Hilsman, Jeff Garlin, Tim Atnell, and Matt Dorn that have all done tremendous work to make that workshop possible, as well as Ansible operators in general. We also have a new a demo. It's called a McRouter operator. McRouter is a small project that routes requests between multiple Memcache instances. So it's pretty simple. Just kind of, this is the declared state. I want a McRouter instance or McRouter process and, 2 Memcached services running, and then routing between that. The operator builds that, and a lot of work has been done by Jeff, Melvin, and Matt on that as well. So that's actually what we demonstrated at Ansible Fest, and it went very, very well, and a lot of good feedback on that. Where to next? So we need more use case ideas that can be demonstrated in less than an hour. The hardest part I think we found with Ansible operators is great, I can do massive database failovers and horrendous operations that would normally take 18, 20 hours before, and one Ansible playbook and convert it to an operator, and off I go. But going from, hey, these people vaguely know Kubernetes, to full blown operator like that in a small amount of time is very hard. Also, you have to tackle the, where do we have real data here? Can we verify that, all the things that we're doing in the workshop actually works? That takes time when you're dealing with large data sets, HA pairs. So, yeah, we need more ideas like that. We have a brand new project under the org's operator framework projects in GitHub, and we will be adding more fun things we need to eventually figure out, since Ansible has decided to go the collections route, where the Kubernetes module for Ansible might need to live long term, if that's going to be maintained by Red Hatters or the community. How is that going to work out in the long run? These are all things that we need to discuss, and those will end up happening on this new project board. So if you have ideas, please feel free to go there, and I will share these slides here shortly. Thank you. Any questions?
Perfect. The only question I have is, can you add some of the links to some of those things like McRouter into the notes?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So without further ado, I wanted to let Anne unmute herself and give her talk, which I've queued up as how to use local storage operator, or how her group did it. But she's done a lot of work around Rook and Ceph and container storage and things. So I'll let her talk and introduce herself and take over the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So first thing I'm finding out is that it appears we're no longer using the local storage operator for the OpenShift container deployment. So I can put this in here, but yeah, we are not using it anymore. We are using block mode and file mode PVCs. The difference is, if you look down here, we're able to do it with the GP2 storage class, or the, in VMware case, the thin storage class, which creates VMDKs. So we could use the local storage operator, but we are not. So that's news to me. I think when the RAI Next project went, basically got reconfigured to be a telco project, that was dropped because there's no need to support bare metal. So what I thought I'd do, just since you know, the local storage operator is something that is deployed again during the OCS 4.2 deployment, but it is not currently used. So what I have, I've just deployed OpenShift 4.2 GA. I also deployed these operators. This is done right now through a manifest because OpenShift Container Storage is not GA yet. In addition to the operators, we also have 2 new dashboards. And these are specific for OpenShift Container Storage. If you chose to install Portworx or Storage OS or Robin.io or yes, you would not have these dashboards. So right now it says OpenShift Container Storage is not available. If we look at the CI here, I'm in, it's a project that got created, OpenShift Storage. So all of the resources for OpenShift Container Storage are going to be in this project. You see that we do create a local storage operator. We also create the NUBA operator. The OCS operator is a meta operator that sort of orchestrates the other operators, and then of course the RxF operator, which is the upstream project that's been around for a bit. So this currently consists of what you get with OCS 4.2. Like I said, just today finding out that we're no longer using the local storage operator to create block and file mode PVCs. So I haven't deployed the cluster yet. I've just booted up the operators, got the dashboards, and I've got the OCS operator. So right now, if we look at what we have, we've basically just done the OCS init, but we haven't deployed the cluster. So I can go to here, and I create the cluster. When that comes up, it tells me which workers I have available. I've deployed on AWS, and I put some things in the install-config.yaml. This is the minimum size on AWS, basically 16 CPUs, 64 gigabyte mem that we are recommending for OCS to be deployed on. So that would be true for VMware and eventually, I assume, for bare metal next release. So if we go back here, you'll see that we have information for at least AWS on the zone, AZ, not for VMware yet. But I just have to basically pick 3 workers that are not in the same AZ. So pick this one. And because they're all the same worker type, I don't really have to worry about which worker I pick. But the masters are not schedulable. I think that's a future enhancement to not show them because you cannot schedule on the masters. So I believe I picked 3 workers. It is required that you pick a minimum of 3 because of the need for availability and the fact that Ceph is going to be a replica 3. So I create. So then I can do a few things, go back to dashboards. I'll start to see a lot of events on the right side. Not up yet, so let's back to our CLI. Do a watch, and this is where local storage operator was used. So these PVCs that you're seeing come up here, these are created by, these are going to be file mode PVCs, but they're created by using the GP2 storage class in that example I showed here. So instead of local C, it'd be GP2. And they are basically an EBS volume that is then creating a PVC, a file mode PVC for the monitors, for the Ceph monitors. So we'll see, here's the first monitor coming up right now. And it's going to go ahead and mount. It turns out the monitors do need some persistent storage in addition to the OSDs. So contrary to, say, when, you know, and Rook now, Rook upstream has this feature as well. But currently with OCS 4 downstream, we only support using a storage class either in VMware or in AWS to create the PVCs. If we're not able to directly use local storage. That will change in OCS 4.3 in January. So if you have local storage connected via, especially on something like VMware, where you want to consume local storage or bare metal, then it would be similar. It would use a block mode or file mode PVC, but you would be consuming local storage instead of creating the volume using a storage class, if that makes sense. So we're almost done with the Mons. After the Mons are deployed, you'll see also, if you haven't seen it, we have all these CSI sidecar pods. Most of the pods have more than one container. You'll see a SFFS sidecar pod for each one of the workers, and you'll also see these provisioners, and you'll see the RBD plugin for each one of the workers as well. So this is all to support CSI, which for CSI, for this version, we support deleting and creating volumes. We currently don't support cloning or snapshotting volumes. That'll be tech preview in 4.3. So we're now seeing the storage come up for the OSDs, these terabyte PVCs that have been created. These are going to be block mode compared to file mode for the Mons. And in a short order here, we see some prepare pods here preparing the, these prepare pods are used to create the OSDs, so that's sort of the last step here. You also notice, and this may or may not go out of pending, there's a BZ right now for this, but you notice that Nuba needs persistent storage as well. So we have the Nuba, this is the server for Nuba. It's currently pending, as is its persistent volume. And the reason it is pending is because it's trying to claim from a storage class that is not backed by Ceph yet. So as an outcome of this deployment, we're going to have three, if it's successful, we'd have three storage classes, one for Ceph RBD or block, one for Ceph FS file, and one to do bucket claims. So bucket claims are brand new to OCS, and probably, as far as I know, I don't know any other storage capability for OpenShift that supports bucket claims. If someone knows, let me know, but I don't think Portworx or OpenEBS or Storage OS or Robin.io support bucket claims. So these bucket claims be really similar to like a PVC. You'll have OBC and you'll have OB that'll back the OBC. And the OBC will be namespace dependent, and then the OB, just like PVs, will be, you know, globally viewable. Of course, if you want to delete an OBC, you would delete at an OBC level, not at the OB level. So I'm going to just get out of here because right now this is not quite working. We have a problem with CEF-RBD PVCs, so I don't think this is going to complete today. But if we go back to the dashboard, you see we start to see some information. It says it is degraded, and it actually is degraded. There is a problem right now with the crush rule in CEF, and you also see the object service is not populated yet because NUBA is not up. So at the time of GA, in about a month from now, this stuff will all be fixed. The GA for this is November 19th for downstream OpenShift, no CS. So I can answer other questions, or we could go in and look at a few more things here. But any questions? Or, I mean, I'm sorry it wasn't totally about local storage operator, but you get the idea, I think.
That's quite okay. So that's actually good to know. Thanks for doing this. Does anyone have any questions for Annette at the moment? And, you know, we can always end a few minutes later. I see that I'm just going to pause for a minute. Jeff Garlin is on the call, and I just want to kind of maybe cue him up either to do a talk at the next operator framework SIG, or if he wants to give a quick update on his work, just, you know, the status check. But for Annette, I think maybe where can you also ran a very nice video yesterday for me when we were talking about it yesterday. We can add the link to that into the notes here, because I think that would be a good thing for people to be able to watch as well, the overall video that you shared.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Maybe someone can add it to the notes, or if I have access.
Okay, cool. All right. So we only have 5 minutes left. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll pause. And Jeff is chatting in the chat here. I can see him saying next time. So I'll add an agenda item for the next meeting, because Jeff's been doing some interesting work around the Ansible stuff as well. And we'll move that forward. So I've been talking in the chat for a couple of things. November 12th, it looks like, would be the next operator framework SIG meeting, if everybody's on board with that, so it doesn't collide with KubeCon itself. And we will host office hours, as Chris has aptly named them, or a face-to-face social kind of thing at some point during KubeCon. Again, the reminder I would have everybody, but is that today is the last day to submit for Red Hat Summit. We'd love to see operators in action talks submitted, especially if you have an operator that you're using behind a firewall at an enterprise and can talk about that. That use case would be wonderful. And if you need any help authoring or writing them, ping me on Slack or somewhere today, and I'll try and give you a hand if you'd like that. We'll be talking again, I'm sure, very shortly in chat or on the mailing list. So here comes the video deployment that I was talking about. That's a Mojo Red Hat one. So that would not be publicly accessible, Annette.
As far as I know, it is not publicly accessible yet, so sorry about that. I'll check. They were going to put it up on YouTube.
If it's okay, then what I will do is I will download it and from Mojo and upload it onto the OpenShift Commons.
It's totally okay. The only thing is it does, suggest using the local storage operator, which is now not true. So.
Okay. So I love, that's why we do these things, so that we can get feedback from our colleagues on what we're doing wrong. So if anyone's interested in this, please reach out to Annette. I think, Annette, you're on the Google group for the operator framework, and if not, SIG, if not, we'll make you get there today.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I am. But
so there's one more mailing list you should be on. And we'll
Okay.
talk to everybody again on the 11th. Not the 11th, I keep saying the 11th, the 12th of November. I'll send out a notice. And again, please let's, if you have a topic like Jeff that we want to talk about at the next meeting, or if there's a topic that you think we should be talking about or an agenda item, please add it to the projects page on the Operator Framework Community Project. And please take a look at the governance document over the next interim. Probably we'll send a notice out with a call for comments to the SIG list shortly as well, or make Daniel do that. And again, if you, one more shout out to, if you're in the Bay Area next week and you want to come to the OpenShift Commons gathering on machine learning and AI, please reach out to me or Rob or Daniel or anyone, and I'll post the promo code to come as my guest. I apologize for those of you who already paid and are coming. But we're going to have a number of operator that are used in machine learning workloads being presented, and a panel on that with NVIDIA and Celadon and the Profit Store and a whole bunch of people who have done that. So that'll be interesting, and we'd love to have you in the room for that as well. So that's in the Bay Area, San Francisco on October 28th. And it's at the San Francisco Marriott just by the airport. So there you go. Anything else, Rob, Chris, Daniel, you want to in the last 60 seconds?
No, just thank you all for joining, and we're right on time, which is
All right.
Likewise.
There you go. And Billy, thanks for coming. And hi. And I've reached out to one of your colleagues to present at the gathering in San Diego. So hopefully we'll get you and I think Ganesh is his name.
Oh, great.
Yeah, on stage in San Diego and hear all about what you're doing at Broadcom these days. So
Thanks.
cool. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And I'll post this video link and the notes, which are probably terrible, but we'll clean them up a little bit with links and everything shortly. So thanks all.